Hello, it's Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you for your thumbs up. Thank you for supporting this channel. And today, it's a simple question. Do we need reparations or more slave stories? There's one thing that I have noticed. America has no shortage of slave stories or enslaved stories to dig up to present to the public. It seems like whenever I go to any publication, even on the internet, there's always some new information about slavery and enslaved people. That these people were enslaved in this place from 1725 to 1850, and it was 230 of them. They just go on and on and on about that. And no slave story is complete without the violence, the abuse, and the humiliation that went along with it. So you get that in graphic details. I don't mind hearing these stories. What I'm saying is there needs to be some reparation stories to go with this. They need to match these slave stories with reparations. Because now they are tracking the descendants of the enslaved people. So they know who they are. But still in all, when you start talking about reparations, then they start dragging their feet and talking about everybody else and how everybody deserves reparations. Well, everybody wasn't enslaved. So anyway, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. This story comes from Reuters, and it says, DNA of enslaved iron workers illuminates African American history. So it's always about the enslaved. Now they're throwing DNA on us. Okay? So when they say that, oh, we don't know who was enslaved, we really don't know who was enslaved, we know now that they're not telling the truth because they're testing the remains of the people that they dig up. Here's a better picture of the woman in the other picture. A lovely young woman. Why in the world would anybody want to hold this woman in captivity? Now let's talk about this group of enslaved people. Not far from Camp David, the United States presidential retreat in Catoctin Mountain Park in Maryland, lies the remnants of an iron forge called Catoctin Furnace, founded in the late 18th century, an important site for understanding the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in early United States history. The site now also is providing unique insight into African American history thanks to research involving DNA obtained from the remains of 27 individuals buried in a cemetery at Catoctin Furnace. The study reveals the ancestry of some of the enslaved people who toiled there in the decades after the nation's founding and identified thousands of living relatives, many still in Maryland. So now we know for a fact those individuals deserve reparations because now they've traced their DNA all the way back to the 1700s. The cemetery was used from 1774 to 1850. The remains held at the Smithsonian Institution since being excavated in the 1970s due to highway construction were of 16 males and 11 females ranging from infants to adults over the age of 60. So the Smithsonian Institution, which really is a huge museum, has their remains. What do you want to bet they're going to keep them? I bet they will. Maybe they'll put them in the African American Museum and say, these are the actual remains of enslaved people. How gruesome. Well, here's some interesting news. The enslaved people were found to have descended from just a few African populations, in particular West Africa's Wolof and Mandinka peoples and Central Africa's Congo people, and have strong genetic connections to present-day populations in Senegal, Gambia, Angola, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, what African country did we not hear in that? In that whole list, they didn't say anything about Nigeria. And yet and still, they try to stick all of us in Nigeria. This says they are connected to present-day populations in Senegal, Gambia, Angola, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay? So here we go. Millions of people were transported from Africa to the Americas from the 16th to 19th century in the transatlantic slave trade, a brutal chapter in human history. See, they gonna always tell us about that trade, aren't they? A lack of documentation regarding these people has left descendants with scant information about their own familial backgrounds. This knowledge was severed by slavery, a truth that has implications for African Americans far beyond the community of Catoctin Furnace, said the co-author of this article, Karen Browell-Hyde, and I don't think that's right, of the Smithsonian's Natural Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. This study demonstrates the power of genomics to reconstruct some of what has been destroyed. For African American and United States history, revealing these stories and family legacies is important to understanding and acknowledging who we are, where we came from, and how we are connected to each other today, the author added. Enslaved people of African descent were forced to work in agricultural, industrial, and domestic settings in parts of the United States. Slavery ended with the 1861 to 1865 U.S. Civil War. Enslaved African Americans are largely excluded from the historical records, and in documents where they are mentioned, they are often treated as property, not as people. The furnace is a few miles from Camp David in Cunningham Falls State Park. It grew into a village complex with industrial buildings and housing. Workers mined iron ore, kept the furnace burning, and made various goods, stoves, pots, utensils, and even cannonballs. Enslaved people dominated its workforce until hiring European immigrants became cheaper by the mid-19th century. Okay, so, black people did it and then showed the Europeans how to do it. And I don't believe for 1 minute the Europeans worked cheaper. So this article goes on to say that they used the 23andMe DNA firm to study these remains and found that about 42,000 African Americans are connected to those individuals, to those 27 individuals, 3,000 people closely related to them. So they ended by saying that the people identified in the study as relatives of the 27 individuals have not yet been notified of the findings, but they say we are considering a way to thoughtfully and ethically return results to those in the 23andMe database who would like to know if they are connected to the Catoctin Furnace individuals. Okay, so this is interesting and it's good to know because they are going to discover that black people were involved in every industry and every aspect of the building of this country. So they keep doing these studies and acting like they are surprised that they found black people in these places. We're not surprised because we know we built this empire. We were involved in the agriculture, we were involved during the Industrial Revolution, and now we are involved in the age of technology. There has never been an age of progression in the United States of America that black people were not only at the forefront, but did most of the work. So they can do all the tests they want to. The only problem I have with things like this is they love to dig up this information. They love to tell us how we were enslaved. We don't need to know anymore. They transported Africans across the Atlantic Ocean in the transatlantic slave trade. It was a human tragedy. We know all of that. And it was it was all about economics. It was all about building an empire and making money for white people. We all get that. Everybody knows that. What they don't ever talk about is the money we lost and the money that we deserve. And that needs to be the next phase of anything they talk about, because we don't need them to tell us anymore about the suffering of the enslaved people, because we already know that. Now we need to talk about the money. We need to talk about compensation in the form of reparations. Okay, y'all, let me know what you think about this. Thank you for listening and have a great day.